Okay, this video is called On Telling the Truth. Telling the truth is a risky thing to do. And I have made a previous video about the truth. It's called How One Can Know the Truth, something like that. That's much longer. This is a short video. That's an extensive discussion of truth. Okay, so anyways, Aleksander Solzhenitsyn, the great Russian writer of the 1900s, he actually lived about 2008. He said, "The truth is seldom sweet. Truth, Stoicism, and Christianity are good for people." He wasn't initially a Christian, but after he saw what had happened to the Russian people, he became a Christian because he saw they behaved the best out of all the people in the difficult times of the 1900s. Excuse me. Here's quotes from Voltaire. He was the philosophe of the 1700s in France. He said, "I'm very fond of truth, but not at all of martyrdom." Voltaire also said, "I want my doctor to believe in God so that he does not rob me." And that's a good point. That's the point I've been making as well. Okay, and then here's another statement for you. What is hate speech? You're going to hear that word, hate speech. What hate speech is, it just means anything the ruler doesn't want at that moment. And it'll change. What's hate speech 1 year? A couple years later, it's not hate speech anymore. And that's an important thing to know. When you hear that, you're seeing control of speech. And speech should be free. A person should have the right to say the wrong thing, make a mistake, say something, inappropriate in other ways. They should be allowed to speak. Don't get me wrong. They could say the wrong thing, but if you don't have free speech, pretty soon you don't have real thought. Okay? Plato, "No man is hated more than he who speaks the truth." George Orwell, "In times of universal deceit, speaking the truth is a revolutionary act." I can assure you that is true. That you don't get in trouble for lying. You don't get in trouble for, doing things that are wrong and lying. You get in trouble for telling the truth. If you look around, you will see the people who got in trouble, they told the truth, all right? And so, on the other hand, though, if mankind loses the truth, he's screwed. Like Michael Crichton had said, whenever an animal's behavior puts it out of touch with reality, it becomes extinct, okay? If a rabbit walks down a path in a forest, and it sees the coyote, the snake, the hawk in the sky, it can go, okay, there's a problem, I can avoid that, okay? But if the rabbit can't perceive the truth where the coyote, the snake, the hawk is, the rabbit's screwed. Dead rabbit, okay? So it's the same thing in real life, is that people need to be able to perceive reality accurately or they're screwed. And so what I do with this YouTube channel, I try to give you the best accurate view that I can of nutrition, health, toxicology, but I also talk to you a little bit about current events because I think you need to know some of these things. And in my experience, people know almost nothing. And it's because they haven't studied history. The things that are happening now are basically the same things that happened in the 1900s, except with more technology, which in some ways makes it worse. It accelerates the rate of these problems. Okay, now here's a quote by Charles Bradlaugh. He says, "Without free speech, no search for truth is possible. Better a 1,000-fold abuse of free speech than denial of free speech. The abuse dies in a day, but the denial stays the life of the people and it entombs hope." Yeah, you need to have free speech to work to the truth. And John Stuart Mill said the same thing. He says, "I'm fine with a person who says something wrong or even lies because we'll work through that thought, we'll prove it wrong, and then we'll more solidly come to the truth." Okay? All right, and then, the experience I had, playing sports. I played sports at a pretty high competitive level, and what I experienced was in sports, everybody was on the same page. The owner of a team, the coach of the team, the athletes, the fans, everybody liked good performance and a good athlete and a good team. It is not like that in the regular outside world, and especially like in healthcare and especially in a lot of other things. Okay, here's... true nutrition and toxicology scholars are hated by many powerful people. Like I said, the great ones, they're always in trouble. Like T. Colin Campbell, they're trying to fire the guy who deserves a Nobel Prize. They're trying to fire him, okay? Big pharma, big chemical companies, big medicine, big agriculture, they don't like people who tell the truth about nutrition and health, okay? And then 99.9% of the public is oblivious. There's a few curious people who read books and a few curious ones who go to the internet, but they're a relatively small group, okay? Now here's a nice quote by Ayn Rand. "True scientists are essentially loners. They pursue knowledge for the sake of knowledge. A scientist who discovers knowledge and shares it to benefit others is the greatest benefactor of mankind. Such men should be considered heroes, but such men are not considered heroes. They are the most hated, blamed, denounced men in so-called humanitarian societies. Yeah, and that was what freaked me out. I was kind of like, yeah, I'll become a great doctor, a great scientist, and then things will be good again. I'll have a fun life like I did when I was a wrestler. It is not like that. The more I advance into knowledge in medicine and come up with stuff, the more people get pissed off at me. And like I told you, I'll talk with my colleagues, and they're like congratulating me for figuring out spinal degeneration disease, cerebral degeneration disease, my neurovascular uncoupling theory, all these neurologists and neuroradiologists and other physicians. But then you send that to the journal. No, they won't even let it through preliminary evaluation, okay, through funding. No, not even out of the preliminary rounds will it get funding. Luckily, you can write a book, and the reason I think we're allowed to write books is because no one reads. But I'm just telling you, that's not how it works. And like I said, too, I got all these internal medicine friends who love all my ideas and who come to me for advice, and who want me to advise them about their own problems and their friends, their families, their patients. And I'm happy to give them my opinion when they request it. But what I'm saying is they are scared to have me come speak in front of their groups. They never invite me to speak in front of the groups because they know that's something you don't do, is bring somebody in from the outside. You don't do that, okay, in medicine. It's weird. It's not like true seekers of knowledge where you want all the different new and advanced perspectives you could get. Okay, gosh, I'm going to have to figure out where I'm at on here. The way I got this set up, it's hard to know. I think this is it. No, shoot, this is not it. Okay, let's see. Sorry about this. I'm going to have to figure this out. I think here we are. Okay, so what I was going to show you is this picture here is a famous painting of the Founding Fathers. And they used to have religious ceremonies in all the buildings of the Capitol, okay? They were 97, 98, 99% Christian, okay? And the reason I tell you all this is where freedom comes from. If you really study, you will see this is the case. And I recommend you study this because you don't have to, but you should know about it because this is where freedom comes from this. And the Communist Party knows this. Why do you think the number one thing the communists did in Russia was get rid of Christianity? Burned down 48,000 churches, killed lots of religious people. Get rid of it. What did China do? Get rid of Christianity, okay? What is the United States Democrats trying to do? Get rid of Christianity. They have to get rid of it because Christianity says all men are equal in the eyes of God, and that pushes to freedom, okay? That's what led to freedom. That's what led to the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, okay? We're lucky in the founding fathers of this country. We had men like Thomas Jefferson and Ben Franklin, okay? But, and John Adams, okay? And this is known. That is why the first push in what you're seeing right now, there's going to be all this push to get rid of Christianity, to get rid of the Bible. They pushed the Bible out of the schools in the 1960s, and they're going to push harder. I think a big part of the alternative morality is to use it as a way to get rid of Christianity, to say that Christianity is immoral, not anything else, and therefore Christianity has to go. Because once Christianity is gone, you won't have a metaphysical foundation upon which to argue for freedom. That'll be toast. That'll be history. And that is well known to the Communist Party. That's why they push for it. Okay, and then a lot of people say, well, this should be this way, this should be this way. What most people don't understand, and I try to help you understand this because until you realize you're kind of on your own and how you are perceived, you can't figure out how to do what's best for you. The way people are perceived, once you go into atheistic Darwinism, which is the alternative to Christianity, yeah, there's all this other stuff, Zen Buddhism, but it has no influence on society. The big views in society are we, a Bible-based, God-fearing people, man-created image of God, or are we a secular atheist society? Once you're secular atheist, there's no such thing as humans anymore. You're simply talking primates. You're like a bunch of cows owned by the ruler. This is how you're perceived. That's why I always laugh when somebody says, well, don't you think we should write a letter and then have them change the rule about such and such a chemical in the food or something else? Don't kid yourself. No one cares about you. You need to know that. No one cares about you. No one's going to come to save you. You have to learn how things are and figure out how to save yourself. And once you do that, you got a good chance to be okay. But if you don't wake up and realize it and keep on waiting for somebody to save you, I think you're going to be quite disappointed. And I think this is like the plan of the Democrats for Christianity in America. The Statue of Liberty is sinking into the sand, and they're going to push down on her head as hard as they can until they get underwater and drown her. And once she's gone and toast, no more free speech, no more privacy, no more property, okay? And there's also going to be a lot less electricity, no gas stoves, okay? You'll be eating bugs and told to like it, okay? And Christian man is going to be behind bars, and no one is going to have a free speech. And it's going to be much worse than anyone can imagine that has not studied history. And so I let you know it doesn't have to be that way, okay? Everybody, there's plenty of resources on this world for us all to live free and be, self-sufficient and happy, okay? This scarcity mentality is just a way to take advantage of you. Okay, so I'm going to share with you now just a couple words of Aleksander Solzhenitsyn. He was sort of the greatest voice of Russia in the 1900s, and yeah, he lived from 1918 to 2008. And he had been a very heroic soldier in the Russian army as they marched into Germany, and he was like commander of a tank squadron, and he figured he'd come back, to Russia and be celebrated as a hero, but instead he was told, you have been corrupted by the West. He was put in concentration camps for a long time. And he later got free. I will just share with you some of his words because, and I would recommend you go study him. Just look up his quotes. Watch a video about him or something. You'll start to get a sense of what really happened in the 1900s because people don't know this. Most Americans, in my experience, are ahistorical, clueless. You talk to somebody from Europe, at least somebody in Europe, they've seen what's happened between all the different countries. They have a clue about something, okay? You talk to America, and it's almost like they're brain damaged by, fluoride in the water. They're like, oh, everything's okay. Yeah, right. All right, so let me just share with you Aleksander Solzhenitsyn. If I was asked to formulate as concisely as possible what was the main cause of the ruinous revolution that swallowed up some 65 million of our people, I could not put it more accurately than to respond, men had forgotten God. That is why all this happened. Men had forgotten God. That is why all this happened. Atheism is the source of it. You need to know that. I talk to a lot of people who mean well, but they just don't get it. They just are so poorly educated, they don't get this. This is obvious. This is the foundation of it all if you've studied it. And it's well worth time to study this a little bit so you'll understand. It'll make sense of events once you get that. The press has become the greatest power in the Western world. Modern society is hypnotized by socialism. Yep. You put something into a slogan and people believe it and you just repeat it. Modern society is hypnotized by socialism. It is prevented by socialism from seeing the mortal danger it is in. Yes, American society is in mortal danger. There are a lot of very bright people who are predicting millions and millions and millions and millions of Americans are not going to make it through the winter. Okay? And one of the greatest dangers of all this is that you have lost a sense of danger. You cannot even see it when it is coming towards you as it moves swiftly towards you. To destroy a people, you must first sever their roots. So there are a lot of very smart people predicting there's going to be massive starvation this winter. Massive. Not a little starvation, massive. And think of all the things that point towards that. Terrible weather this summer, cloudy, 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 cloudy. Trains tipped over with bad chemicals spilled into the rivers that irrigate the farms. Food processing plants, many, many, many of them destroyed. Okay? Now, crap coatings put on the fruits and vegetables that make them toxic, whereas they used to be good. Other concerns about other problems with the food supply. Okay? It's much worse than most people realize, okay? To destroy a people, you must first sever the roots. Aleksander Solzhenitsyn. What do you think's been done by destruction of art in this country with all this nonsense, fake modern art, fake statuary, okay? Tearing down old statues, not teaching history to the kids in school, not teaching them about the Greeks and the Romans and the Renaissance, okay, and the 1800s, what really happened from a cultural point of view. The 1800s was a magnificent cultural epoch if you actually study it, like the Victorian Renaissance. Some incredible stuff happened there. And I can say that even though I have resentment for the British, I can admire that Victorian England did lead to some impressive stuff. I actually think the Catholic component of the Victorian Renaissance was the better part in many ways, but that's another topic for another day. Okay, back to Aleksander Solzhenitsyn. Atheism was at the core of the entire Soviet system. Atheism was at the core of the entire Soviet system. Atheism is what makes it possible. You must understand that the leading Bolsheviks hated the Christians. Hated the Christians. They tortured and slaughtered millions of Russians without a shred of remorse. It cannot be overstated. Bolshevism committed the greatest human slaughter of all time. The generations now coming out of Western schools are unable to distinguish good from bad. Even those words are unacceptable. This causes impaired thinking ability. A smart person knows this is right, this is wrong, this is good, this is bad, okay? The average person doesn't know that, and that's why they're so weak and clueless. Solzhenitsyn continues, for us in Russia, communism is a dead dog. Communism is a dead dog. But for many in the West, it's still a living lion. Here's the reality. Solzhenitsyn points it out. There is no communism. There are only communists. What I'm saying is the Communist Party will take everything. Everything. And everybody else is going to be a poor chump starving and working as a slave. Okay? That's how it works. It's designed to work that way. And anything that says to the contrary is just, nonsense to trick people. That's how it works. That's how it always is. It's not a question of where it happens. That's how it always is. Question everything. Question everything. This is Solzhenitsyn. The enemies of the human race respect the big fist and nothing else. The harder you slug them, the safer you will be. Communism will never be halted by negotiations or through the machinations of détente. It can only be halted by force from without or by disintegration from within. That which is called humanism, but what would more correctly be called irreligious anthropocentrism, it's kind of a fancy word there. So he's basically saying all these sort of atheist, clueless people who sort of mean well, but they don't know anything. They cannot give answers to the most essential questions of our life. It is within the power of writers and artists to do much more to defeat the lie. There is a way to help men understand. It is art and it is literature. Okay, Aleksander Solzhenitsyn, there is a way to help men understand. It is art and it is literature. Okay, Aleksander Solzhenitsyn lived 1918 to 2008. And that's one of the things I'm trying to say as well, is that if you look at the art of Western civilization, it's magnificent, okay? It's not even good. It's magnificent. It's up here, okay? It's incredible. The music of the Christian tradition, it's incredible. And then you look at what comes out of these secular atheist societies. I could show this in another lecture. You have all these museums. These are museums in Europe, like in Rotterdam, where they have statues of feces. Okay, that's art. Once you go down that path of atheism, you end up with garbage, okay? The buildings stink. The art stinks. There's no good art that comes out of communism. There's no good sculpture. Because it says that life is meaningless, okay? If you're just, a meaningless talking primate in a cage, there's nothing to make art about. There's nothing inspiring. And that's why there's so many alcoholics and screwed up lives, and I know people who grew up in communist Eastern Europe, and the men are alcoholics off the charts. It's depressing. The women who are real pretty and they would real easily have had a wealthy husband in the United States, been set for life, and in communist Russia, they were working as prostitutes. The economy's so bad there. It's just a disaster, and people starving, being put into cattle cars. I've heard all these stories. These are real stories from people. I've read about all this, but I've talked to people who told me all these stories too. It's much worse than you can imagine. So hopefully we're not going to end up down that path. But people need to realize communism is not good for you, okay? And you can call it liberalism. You could call it whatever you want. But it is not going to make life better for people.